Welcome back to another episode of Life in the Stands podcast. We have Bender, Beans, and Zach on the podcast today. We're really excited for a good episode. We got the Super Bowl coming up over the weekend, so it should be a really, really good weekend. Remember to shoot us a follow at stands_life. We're on YouTube and TikTok at Life in the Stands. We're also on Spotify at Life in the Stands. Thanks again for listening. And yeah, let's jump right into the Super Bowl happening this weekend. We have a resident Niners fan on the podcast. So, Beans, how do you think this weekend is going to go? Are you going to be happy going back to work Monday, or are you going to be willing to tear down the whole city of San Francisco?
I think I'm going to be walking in with a smile on my face. I think this is a really close game. I think that Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid are going to be, going to go down in history as, one of the best quarterback head coach duos ever. So, um, but I don't know. I think our team's just too good overall. We have all pros all across the field. We have ways to trick their defense into thinking it's going to be one player, one formation, and then all of a sudden it's the opposite. Um, so I think it's going to be a Niners dub, and I think I'm going to go with 31-24 Niners.
I think
All
that's a
right.
little bit too high scoring for this one, if I'm being honest.
Anything more defense? I also have a question for you, Beans. Would you
Uh-huh.
rather be leading going into the fourth quarter, or would you rather be trailing going into the fourth quarter in this game?
I would for this team this year and for like the story that it's going to create for like history. I want to have us come back in the fourth quarter against Andy Reid and against Patrick Mahomes, and then to get the dub.
So
That would
confident
make up
answer.
that
Confident
would make
answer.
up for the comeback win that they had against you guys a couple years ago.
Exactly. We'll even it up.
Yeah, for sure. I do agree with you how you'll show them different looks and try and confuse their defense and all. I think we already kind of know how the Niners are built. Run the ball, play defense, set up play action for big play Purdy to make one big play every now and then. You don't expect them to do too much other than be a
Every now
game
and then.
manager, in my opinion. But um, let's go into the Chiefs because I think this is where things kind of differentiate between them and the Niners. They have had their struggles throughout the year. Something that's big to me is that their right tackle, Taylor, has struggled all year, one of the most penalized linemen in the league, and he's matched up against Bosa. That is not a good matchup for the Chiefs going into this.
But they get
Another
hold.
for sure. And another thing to mention here is that the Chiefs' run game has been a big part of their playoff run so far. I just think a stout Niners front line is going to blow that up, which I think is the way they need to win this game. Blow that up, make Mahomes throw the ball, which sounds kind of crazy, but here's the deal. I'm not telling Mahomes to make a play. I'm telling their receivers to make a play.
Anyone
I
that
think outside of Rashee Rice and Travis Kelce, everybody knows nobody else is dependable at this point. They have been at least enough in these first couple of games of the postseason. I think it'll all come true for the Chiefs, and they'll fall apart here in this one. Um, and I do have the Niners winning this in a defensive battle, 23-17.
23-17. So yeah, definitely a lot lower scoring. And you make some good points there. You definitely make some good points about the Chiefs run game and again, about the Chiefs receiving core, about the Chiefs offense in general, because they haven't been that impressive really the whole season leading up into the playoffs. So it's impressive that they have turned it on in the playoffs and made the plays they needed to make. But I am going to go with the Chiefs in this game because of the one guy on offense you didn't mention, well, except for the end, which is Mahomes. You didn't mention being a problem. And I think, when we talked last podcast and I took the Chiefs over the Ravens, it's because I just trust Mahomes in the playoffs based off what he's done. That being said, I watched Mahomes lose a Super Bowl very badly because he tried to do too much. And what was that final score? Like 31-9 against Tampa Bay, right? 31 to
he
9,
was running for his life that game.
right? Running for his life and was a little out of control. So I'm not going to say that I don't see the potential for this game to look a little bit like that because I think if the Niners win, it actually won't be close. I think if the Niners win this game, it will look a little bit like that game because going into that game against Tampa Bay, no one expected that to be the case. Everyone expected it to be a 31-28 kind of Mahomes Brady duel kind of a thing. It wasn't close, right? And I think everyone's looking at this game like it's going to be close. So if the Chiefs lose, I think it looks a lot more like that that other Super Bowl that Mahomes lost.
The 10
But
point
but
loss.
I think yeah, but I think the Chiefs win this game. And I think the Chiefs win this game because number one, I still do trust Mahomes more than Brock Purdy. I think there is a maturity to Mahomes' game now, and he has changed a lot since that Super Bowl loss, which resulted in his last Super Bowl win.
Mm-hmm.
So um, I think they're also riding the momentum of being an underdog. I think the Chiefs have been an underdog almost the whole postseason, which is not normal for them. I think that also creates some internal momentum for the team. And then the last thing I'll kind of mention about this game that I think I might take the opposite perspective on from you guys is I'm going to talk about the Chiefs defense actually being a lot more solid than the Niners defense. Over the
Hmm,
back half of the season and
more
over the
solid.
playoffs, the Chiefs defense and the substance on the Chiefs defense is actually, you know, actually a lot more solid. Like they've been making the plays, they've been better on third down, they've been better in the red zone, they've been better at forcing 3 and outs, they've been better at turnovers than the Niners defense on the back half of the season. And the Niners defense has not been good against the run in the back half of the season. So you talk about a stout Niners front, it hasn't been that stout. The Niners have given up a lot of running yards, throughout the playoffs and things. And so I don't think that the Niners defense should be getting as much credit really as it was. I'm going to take the Chiefs defense with guys like Nick Bolton and Trent McDuffie and
Chris
Chris
Jones.
Jones. Yeah, like I'm going to take that
Yeah,
defense because again, no one's
Justin
talking about it. Yeah, everyone wants to talk about that Niners defense again. Like the
Loftus.
yeah, Karlaftis. Yeah, there's pieces over there, and then don't forget about it. So Sneed is
Need, yeah.
incredible, right? All
Yeah.
Pro corner this year should be. I don't know if he already is, but um,
He
yeah,
all
there's
right.
pieces over there. So I'm gonna take the Chiefs in this game. If I go score prediction, I think it will be close. I am kind of in agreement with Bender that I don't think there's going to be that much offense in this game. I think it will be a ball control, don't make the mistake, hit the 2 plays you need to make on offense kind of a game. So I'm gonna go 21-17 Chiefs over Niners.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. I'll get
That
into
was very
the
long-winded. Thank you for letting me get all that out.
Yeah.
You're welcome. You had our permission. But no, I'll get into the Chiefs defense a little bit later on. Um, I'm just not a believer in the Chiefs offense at this point. I think the Niners, the way their scheme kind of works, is something that the Chiefs haven't seen all season. Like you can play against running quarterbacks like Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson. You have different schemes for different teams. Didn't try to rhyme there, but here we are. Uh, but no, so I just
Keep
think
going, Bender. No.
they'll mess them up, and I just think I don't know. I think it'll be too much. I don't think the Chiefs defense is experienced enough. If that makes sense. I think it's the youngest defense in the league. I think the average age is 25. They are playing their what's off right now. Like I will give them that. I just think there comes a point in time where coaching matters and scheme matters and experience matters.
And I'll take Spags.
Yeah, see, I like that matchup though with Spags because Brock Purdy's one of the best quarterbacks against the blitz in the league,
Good point.
against a notoriously blitz heavy defense and defensive coordinator. It'll be a good
Good point.
matchup. I'm excited. I'm kind of I mean, if I'm nervous about any specific matchups, I would say it'd be like the interior O line against Chris Jones would be my biggest worry. He's a game wrecker. I mean, and, anybody knows that pressure like right up in your face is something that no quarterback wants to deal with on a regular basis. So it'll be
Right.
to the interior line for the Niners to make sure we don't get that, done.
I do have a question though. So Zach, you're the only one here that has the Chiefs winning. But if the Chiefs win this one, do you think this makes them like a complete dynasty like the Patriots were or like the Cowboys were back in the day, like all that kind of stuff? Like, do you think they become a dynasty?
Had to mention the Cowboys
Of course.
or like the Steelers.
Or the Steelers. Yeah. Big
Has
name
there been
franchises.
has there been another like the Niners? The Niners have had
Yeah,
dynasty
Niners,
dynasty
Steelers,
eras.
Cowboys, Patriots.
Yeah.
I think those are. Would you say
Chiefs.
those are the big four franchises that have had like runs of like 3+ Super Bowls in a 10-year span?
Yeah, I'd agree. I think you could probably argue the Seahawks with the
Oh, maybe.
12th man,
No, one
maybe.
Super Bowl
Was it only one?
win, two Super Bowl appearances. That's it. No,
Yeah,
not
no,
a
yeah,
dynasty.
no, it doesn't. It shows you
That's
how
fair.
hard
That's
it
fair.
is to be at that level, though.
Yeah.
Um, and that's why I would say, if they win this one, I think they are a dynasty then, because it reaches that kind of like 3 championships within a decade span, right? Like
And I
that's
mean,
hard to
that's like
argue with. Like, yeah,
championships in 5 years.
yeah, in 5 years
Yeah.
even.
I
So,
mean, that's
I
not even
mean,
a decade. I mean, he's almost taking what what Tom Brady's doing and doubling it. I mean, if
But a
you
lot
think
of
yeah,
those teams that we're considering dynasties have won 3 and 4 years as well, if you think about it that way. some could argue that the Chiefs are already a dynasty. I
I
know
would.
Beans and I were talking about this earlier, actually. I
Okay.
believe, actually, I'll let you speak on that real quick. You go
Yeah,
ahead.
I just think that a team that's as dominant as they have been. I mean, how many straight AFC championships have they made? I think six.
since Mahomes
Three
has
of,
been there.
three of them resulting in Super Bowls or Super Bowl appearances. Four of them resulting in Super Bowl appearances. I mean, there's no other team that's done that except for the other teams that we're talking about. And we all consider those dynasties. So, whether they win or lose a Super Bowl, I don't think that there's an argument to be made that they're slowing down at all. I think that this is a down year for them, and the fact that they could parlay a year like they've had into a Super Bowl appearance and potential win, I just don't see how you have an argument against them. You know what I mean? Like from a logistics standpoint, they're ridiculous. They're unreal. Best quarterback, best head coach in the league, in my opinion.
I
Yeah,
think it's hard to argue with that precedent too. I'll let you go first though, Bender, because I do have more to say about this.
yeah. All I'm gonna say is I don't think they're a dynasty until they win their third. It's gonna be simple for me to
They could make
explain
the Super
this.
Bowl next year, and it could be their third. You know what I mean?
For
That's the
sure. But so
thing.
here's the thing. I don't think, obviously, I don't have the Chiefs winning this time around, but I have them
They
winning
won't.
at least one more in the next two seasons. I have them winning one more in the next two seasons because as long as you have Mahomes, you have a chance. And as long as you have this defense, they're going to continue to develop. So that gives you time to kind of improve your offense and improve your weak spots, like the receivers, like we were talking about earlier. And my whole thought process is like, we don't start talking about any sport dynasty at all until somebody wins a third. Like we weren't
Mhm.
talking about the Warriors being a dynasty until they won their third with KD. So I think you can kind of compare it to different sports. Um, but I think it's always the magic number of three. I think that's kind of a very opinionated thing to say. Because you can say, yeah, you were dominant and made an AFC championship game 6 straight years. That makes sense. I get it. Appearances matter, but at the same time, you go back when the Cowboys were beating up on the Bills made the Super Bowl like 3 straight times,
Four.
still lost to the Cowboys. We don't call them a dynasty because they never won.
Right.
Um,
But the Chiefs
so
have one. That's the difference is they've had more straight appearances with wins sprinkled in there.
Yeah.
of course, but
That,
if they go in the 4 Super Bowl appearances, they go 2-2. I don't think you call them that until they win their third.
yeah. I mean, this is a really nuanced
Argument.
conversation because I think it factors in like your future outlook on the league as well as what you think is going to happen in this game. So that like there's a lot of variables and like how you're looking at this question. But yeah, I mean, I see Mahomes with a decade-long contract sitting out in front of him, and I don't see Andy Reid like slowing down on the
Seriously
cheeseburgers
declining.
either. So like I think they're gonna be there for a while. And if they're gonna be there for a while, like yeah, like they're winning at least one more in the next couple of years, probably multiple in the next couple of years if all the cards are played right. Which it seems like they do because remember Rashee Rice is a rookie, so they obviously drafted well at wide
Mhm.
receiver, and that defense is so young. They didn't trade for all those players. That means they were developed and drafted. So they are good at doing this. They can sustain in the right ways. So,
Mhm.
I think the Chiefs win more. So that's why I would say I wouldn't currently call them a dynasty, but they will be. Like I'll put it in the 99.99% category. That's like, yeah, like they will be a dynasty. Um,
Mhm.
and I think the difference maker for me is if they win this championship this year, you are starting to look at it like a Bill Belichick Tom Brady pairing. Because then you're
Right.
looking at a decade long contract in front of Mahomes with three already under his belt. Now that's seriously like something to talk about. You could be looking at the next GOAT. And
I was
that's
just gonna
like even an
say,
outlandish thing to say, but like that could get
yeah,
there. Like he's won MVP already. He could obviously
Twice.
win more.
He's done it
Two-time
twice.
MVP. He's won the
Super
Super Bowl
Bowl
MVP. He won
MVP.
multiple Super Bowls. Could get more here.
Two Super Bowl MVPs.
Like it's not out of the question. And I don't think anyone would disagree that there's more innate arm talent and physical talent with Mahomes than there was with Brady. So if Mahomes then goes out and wins just as much or more than Brady does,
Mhm.
because I think even like going back to like all-time QB conversations, like Aaron Rodgers is always an interesting QB, right? Because he does everything you want a QB to ever do, makes every throw, gets out of the pocket, makes the right plays. Like, has had the ridiculous touchdown interception ratio seasons, like, does everything, right? Game winning
Career.
drives, but like, hasn't won, like, only won the one, right? Like probably should have won more than he really has. So when you talk about like the greatest quarterbacks of all time, it's like, are you taking talent, like a guy like Rodgers, or are you taking like Brady, the guy that's going to win you 7 chips? And we could be looking at a guy in Mahomes that's like, well, have both, and
Or
that's
Purdy.
insane.
I think this is where this conversation is going to change because we won't be talking about a dynasty anymore if they win this weekend. Because I think we'll end up talking about individual performances or coach quarterback duos. I think that's going to be a whole separate branching of conversations.
Or quarterback, tight end, receiver duos, because Kelsey and Mahomes are going to get talked about a ton as well.
They're already talked about because they passed Brady and Gronk for the most touchdowns in postseason history as a duo. So I think um, there's going to be a lot of conversations had. But real quick question before we move to the next thing: how many Super Bowl wins do you think Mahomes needs to pass Brady?
I think he needs to tie it. He needs to get to 7.
Yeah, he has to. Yeah, exactly. Tie it, and I think that if he ties it, it has to be in some sort of like less time.
But
You
also
can't
think
do
think about the
seven and take
like
a longer amount of time. I guess that makes sense.
like Brady won a Super Bowl in his 40s. Did he win
Right.
2 in his 40s or just one?
One.
Just
One. So I mean, he won a
The
Super Bowl in his
the year he
40s.
turned 40, it was his last year at the Patriots, which he played like trash.
So I mean, yeah, like he won a Super Bowl in his 40s. He also got a much later start than Mahomes on like the actual Super Bowl winning. Like I think it could happen. I don't think it's out of the question. Mahomes does everything that you need a QB to do to consistently win playoff games. It's there's nothing else you can say about it. It's as simple as that. And in the game of football, a QB that makes the play that needs to be made when the time that comes that play needs to be made, like that is the single most important yet single most difficult piece to put in place in a football team. And the Chiefs
I
have it, and they locked it down for a decade.
so one last comment here before we move on. I all I want to say is we'll wait for this weekend. We'll see if he wins another. I'm going to disagree with you guys on he needs to win 7 because I think if he wins this weekend, we're going to have a whole different conversation about who's the GOAT.
You
So
Already?
I'm
think
just going to leave
for
it at that.
3? That's a little ridiculous in my
Wow.
opinion.
He's not
Just
even
going to leave it
30
at
yet,
that.
right?
I'm just
No,
going to leave it at that.
I think
Like,
he's
what if Mahomes
22,
retires after this weekend? What if he's like, all
27.
right, I'm done. That was good.
That would never happen. Brittany wouldn't let
What if?
them.
All right, yeah, let's move on. Let,
Yeah,
let me
let's.
ask this question then, since I'm asking the resident Niners fans here on the podcast. Guys taking the
Fans, like
losing
F.
team of the Super Bowl, but let's ask Beans first. Beans, if the Niners do lose this game, who's to blame?
Ooh, who's to blame if the Niners lose this Super Bowl? Steve Wilkes. I think that if we let up enough, I think that the offense that we have and the amount of points that we're able to put on the board is enough to win the game 9 times out of 10. Now, can Steve Wilkes lock down Patrick Mahomes and hold him under 30 points? Because I think it's a race to 30, kind of like we said it was between the Niners and the Lions 2 weeks ago. And I think that Steve Wilkes, if he is, worth anything, he stops Mahomes and he, keeps him under that 30 mark so we can get a dub. Yeah, Steve Wilkes would be my answer for sure.
I'm going to let Zach go first on this one because I have a very interesting take that might take a little longer.
That is a very interesting thing to say. But if the Niners lose this game, I think it's important to think about how you think the Niners lose the game.
Right.
And if I think about how the Niners lose this game, I think to myself, turnovers, mistakes. So if I think of myself, turnovers, mistakes, the initial thought would probably be like Purdy, but I'm actually not going to say Purdy. I'm going to say his weapons let him down.
Hmm.
I'm going to say like there's like, there's a tipped ball up in the air back into the secondary interception, kind of a pick. I'm going to say like maybe there's a McCaffrey fumble, or if the Niners throw in, a secondary running back for a couple of plays, maybe there's a
Elijah
fumble there.
Mitchell.
So I'm going to say like it'll be the weapons of the Niners just making like 1 or 2 mistakes,
Which would
Okay.
be game changing.
Yeah,
which could be
I
yeah.
think
So in this game, I think it'd be game changing. Yeah.
that's a very unique take just because when we think about the Niners, we're always talking about like
How much of a
Purdy
strength
looks
they are.
Purdy looks better because he has those weapons.
Right.
And like everything gets put together like perfectly because of them. this is where, my opinion, I think Purdy will be the one to blame by me. But I think if Purdy throws that interception on like a potential game-winning drive, I think what you're going to hear from the media is from Kyle Shanahan, um, and his play calling, and like he choked again kind of thing.
Because if we
So
can't put up points and we fall behind, then why are
yeah,
we?
so I already have it as a grinded out game, 23-17, right? So that means I think it's going to be a grinded out run defense, make a good
Possessions
play
are
action
better.
bomb like here and there, like that kind of thing. I I just don't think anybody's ever gonna figure out a way to blame Purdy for if they lose. I think the only way that happens is if he turns the ball over like 3, 4 times like he did against the Ravens during the season. I think that's the only time you see that.
I
Um,
think people have built in to hate on Purdy. I think that if they lose, that he'll. There's going to be discussions about him for sure.
there's gonna
Issues,
be discussions, but I think
praise,
there's room to
things like
stay.
that. Things like that.
He still has room to grow. He still has room to grow. So I think that's where they're gonna blame Shanahan and be like, why didn't you give the ball off to McCaffrey 25 times this game?
Right.
Because I think if they lose, it's going to be because McCaffrey only has 14, 15 touches, which I don't think will happen. But
Mhm.
in the event that it does, because he did kind of screw up and not chew clock with the Falcons, it's a possibility. Like I just don't trust him after that whole thing. Um,
We're bringing
so
up
I just think there's going to
2017.
be two different takes between me blaming Purdy and the media is going to blame Shanahan. Then you're going to see a whole different coaching carousel, whether it's Steve Wilkes or whatever it is. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think, like Shanahan's job is going to be safe regardless, even though I do think you really have to start questioning things if they do give up a fourth quarter lead or if, the Niners don't pull this game out. Like the Niners roster is more talented in this game. Yeah, I think we can all agree on that. Like if you look top to bottom, the big names, the contracts, the pure talent probably goes, overall roster top to bottom to the Niners. So,
Yeah,
For sure.
and yeah, I don't even think that'd be much debated.
close.
But
Yeah.
uh, yeah, I mean, really makes me nervous for a guy like Steve Wilkes who could be looking at losing his job because there's gonna have to be a fall guy. And even
Hmm.
though I've already seen ridiculous tweets like if the Niners lose this game, are Sam Darnold and Brock Purdy gonna go into next training camp in a QB duel? Which I'm
Well,
like,
we'd have to re-sign Darnold because he's his contract's up after this year.
and I still think that's ridiculous. Like Purdy still has brought you to this point
He's an MVP
multiple
candidate
times,
until
right? MVP
December
candidate, yeah.
25th.
And really, like you don't know what would have happened last year if he didn't get hurt too, because that,
Oh, we
still
know.
for
We
all
know.
the people that
We
talk
thought
about
week
Purdy,
13.
for all the people that talk about Purdy, like that does not get talked about enough. The fact that last year does not get talked about. The fact that the Niners just had to roll over kind of because they literally had no QB. The league made rule changes for that reason, and yet when we talk about Brock Purdy, everyone wants to forget about that. So I think a little bit more respect also has to be shown to him for that reason, because the Niners were in that game and could have won that game against the Eagles for all we know if he could have thrown the ball. Um, but all that being said, I think you do have a good point, Bender. I think Kyle Shanahan's going to be on the chopping block, which means one of the other coaches probably is. But at the end of the day, I think Purdy and Shanahan are back next season too, no
Right.
matter what.
Week
So
1.
yeah,
I think they're back, but at the same time, somebody's going to take the blame. So either way, that is what it is. But real quick before we do move to coaching hires, I'll end with the fact that I think this won't be the last time you see the Chiefs and the Niners in the Super Bowl. This is now the second time. The Niners are a very young team as well, between McCaffrey and Debo and Ayuk. Like
Not that young.
those guys aren't old. I think it all comes down to injuries at this point with them. Debo, McCaffrey, Kittle, they're always banged up. I think it's a good thing that there's no injuries for the Niners going into this that are significant.
You
Um,
can wait 2 minutes.
so
that's actually an awesome thing to mention in general about this game is that there's no injuries really going into the Super Bowl, which is awesome. Like
yeah,
it's so cool to see like both rosters fully healthy, ready to go.
yeah. So let's move to coaching hires real quick. There is 8 openings this off season, or not even this off season, just towards the postseason with everything going on. But the first one we'll start with, and I'll start with Zach here. The Falcons actually hired Raheem Morris, which I thought was kind of a shock to a lot of people. So let's get into that.
Yeah, I think Raheem Morris was actually a really good hire. I think at the end of the day, he brings a lot of good defensive prowess to the Atlanta Falcons, to a young defense that's still a little bit moldable, moldable, young defense, but that's quite the word. Um, but I really think there's a lot of good pieces there. Jesse Bates just came there in the last offseason. I think there's also a really good chance that you have a new QB there and just like a new system in general on offense. But you also have some solid pieces, in the backfield, obviously, and with Kyle Pitts there, Drake London. There's some youth there as well. So I actually really like the Raheem Morris hire. I think if you actually like ask around some league circles, people would say that he was one of the best defensive coordinators or one of the best coaches that was not a head coach in the league still. Um, and people were excited for him to get another shot. So I think that
Yeah,
it's going to work out better for them than Bill Belichick. I'm going to give this a B plus. I'll give that one a B plus.
yeah, I actually don't mind the signing. I think he'll find a way to unlock all of the weapons that are out there. I think you need somebody that's willing to kind of put them in the correct spots. We all know Arthur Smith was not that guy. Have fun in Pittsburgh.
Yeah,
Um,
not that guy's head
so
coach. Hopefully he can go back to his OC ways, please.
yeah, I
Please.
hope for the good of everybody. But no, I think for me, I would have liked to seen Vrabel with the Falcons. That's just my opinion. Just with Bijan and Algier being there, and he loves a run game, and especially his tight ends as well. So it's a shame for that. But I would give this hire probably a B minus. And it's more just because I was let down. It wasn't somebody else. It's nothing against Raheem Morris. I thought it would have been maybe even Belichick at that because Belichick was inquiring about that job as well.
Right.
I think it's very weird to see Vrabel and Belichick not be hired in this coaching carousel this year, but I don't know. Been
Yeah.
seeing a big change in the league with younger coaches as well.
Yep. Younger coaches and seeing reports too about like Belichick doesn't want to give up control, right? So he wants to step
Yeah.
into an organization and do everything again, which an org's got to be like, ooh, like, do we really want to like have that be the case again? I think it'd be awesome, so awesome for Belichick to be a defensive coordinator somewhere. I think it would be
Yeah.
incredible. But we'll wait to see if that happens. Speaking of old coaches, Nick Saban joined College Game Day, which is also really exciting.
Yeah.
Sorry, just
Yeah.
old coaches. But then, yeah, going back from Belichick and then Mike Vrabel as well. I think a report came out about Vrabel that front offices were intimidated by his size. Did you
Yeah.
see that? It's
Yeah.
like
That's crazy.
you're running a football team and you're not going to hire a head coach because
Yeah.
what? What are you
I
talking
don't know.
about?
People are weird.
Yeah, I don't know who wrote that report. I don't even know if it's true or not, right? But the fact that someone wrote that and was like, "This is an interesting story." It is interesting because what?
They're gonna catch wind of anything and try and make it a storyline, but
Oh my
that is what
gosh,
it
yeah.
is.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's actually stay with the Patriots. They hired former Patriot himself, Gerard Mayo. Um, I'll actually start with this one. So I'm a big fan of former players becoming coaches, and especially if you look out in Detroit right now, the Dan Campbell signing's looking real nice. I think
What
there
about
is a
Jeff
lot of potential.
Saturday?
I saw he I think did an okay job with what he had, if I'm being honest with you. I know it's a funny joke and all, but I think he did pretty okay for what he had with his team. But moving on from Jeff Saturday, I don't even know why we're talking about him right now. He needs to stay on Get Up and ESPN and just stay there. But no, I think this has potential. I think bringing in a young coach to relate to their players, which is a big issue with the Patriots, is a big deal. So I would actually grade this a B plus. I think it's just because of the familiarity and the respect level those players will have for him.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be a bad move either. I do kind of worry that even though they're bringing in a younger coach, it's still going to be a Belichick style. And I worry that because of how quickly the transition happened, how quickly it all got announced, how quickly it all was decided. And I even saw reports that like this succession plan was like in place for Belichick, like
Yeah.
for years. Like they knew it was going to be Mayo. So it's like all of those things are pretty concerning to me, to be honest. Um, yeah, pretty concerning to me. I think Gerard Mayo is still going to be a great coach, but I wonder if some of the benefits you talk about like being a younger coach, connecting the players, more of those kind of things will kind of be lost because it's not going to feel that different. It's just going to feel like a younger extension of Bill Belichick's system, kind of like a talking head almost. I don't know, but I'll give it like I'll give it like a C plus, just because I think there's a lot of unprovenness there. And I also, the other part of this is why I'll grade a little bit lower is because of how quickly you move with that, you also take away your ability to look at any outside candidates,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
like you can't limit yourself in today's league from at least interviewing two or three people. There's got to be people out there that you're interested in.
Yeah.
So I think that
I can
also
respect that
is
opinion.
yeah.
Yeah. I respect that opinion. I guess a lot of these signings, to be honest with you, are kind of a wait and see.
Yeah.
Something that we had a chance to see is Antonio Pierce with the Raiders, who officially is now their head coach. I'm going to give this an A. I think he's the best thing for them at this moment. You saw how much fun those guys were having winning with
Yeah.
him as their coach. I think that's enough said, and I think this is an A signing.
Yeah, I'll give it an A too. I think you said all it needs to be said. I just saw a clip of him that said like he was talking about how he needed the whole building to be behind him. Like you didn't just need the players, didn't just need the staff, like you needed the building to be behind Antonio Pierce. And like I think he's a
Yeah,
good guy. I think he's a good hire. Yeah, A, easily.
for sure. Um, so I could be butchering this name, but the Panthers signed Dave Canales. I am just not a fan of this one. I feel like the Panthers find a way to screw up, in my opinion. I don't think it's his time. I respected what he was doing elsewhere, but I just don't think he's the right guy for this specific job. I think you still need to
Yeah.
build an O line in Carolina. There's a lot of holes. He's going into a situation that is not going to be good for him. So he needs at least probably like 3 years of leeway to build up a team before they even think about firing him, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So
Well,
I'm actually going to give this a D plus.
did you see that his deal was like 6 or 7 years too? So I mean, they're
Yeah.
apparently they plan on giving him the time, but I think the reason behind this hire in theory is that Dave Canales is supposed to be, one of the up and coming QB guys in the league, and you just went and
Yeah.
drafted Bryce Young, so you better figure out a QB guy to bring in that can make Bryce Young play a little bit better than what happened last year. Even though, like you said, there's a lot of other issues at O line and other spots, even the talent at wide receiver, I think, even running back for that matter, they had a little bit of a juggling rotation throughout the year. So I think in theory, I understand it, but in practice, this kind of looks like Arthur Smith becoming a head coach and then going 7-10 for 3 straight seasons because he's much better suited as an offensive coordinator and QB guru instead of a head coach.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think like C minus, like you said, it's not his time yet.
Yeah. Let's let's go out west. Let's go to Jim Harbaugh and the Chargers. I'll start as the Michigan guy here. I think this is a great
Yeah,
hiring. However, I'm not going to give it an A or an A minus. I'm going to say B plus on this one. I think it's just because they're going to have some holes too. There's a lot of expiring contracts. They need to figure out where they want to go with specific pieces. I believe Khalil Mack is on the trading block this offseason. So I think you'll see a lot of movement. I think in the long term, I would call it an A grade for this one, but I think this upcoming year is only a B plus just because I think he'll help Justin Herbert progress rather than be the same old that he's been the last few years.
yeah, I really like the Harbaugh hire too. Obviously he's just coming off winning a national championship, so he's on his A game. He's motivated. I think he's really excited to be back in the NFL. Um, Yeah, I mean, honestly, I'll give this one an A, like straight up, because I just think he's ready to come back to the NFL. I think he's really excited about that opportunity, and I think he won something for the first time in his coaching career, like actually won it all. And I think that makes a really big difference too in the confidence level coming back to a job like the Chargers.
For sure. Let's actually move out to a guy that was his defensive coordinator out in Michigan for a little bit. Mike McDonald, who was the defensive coordinator for the Ravens this past season, has signed with the Seahawks. Um, I think this is a great signing. I think it gets back to their old ways of playing defense in the 12th man. And I think they have a lot to build around over there as well. I think they do need, all respect to Geno Smith, I do think they need a new transition of a quarterback out there, whether it's JJ McCarthy or whatever route they want to go with that. So I'll give this one an A minus.
I'm a fan of JJ McCarthy. Wouldn't it have been great to see Harbaugh go to a team that could have drafted JJ McCarthy. That would have been kind of cool. But
for sure.
the Mike McDonald hire is a good one. I think he's a little too young and inexperienced yet, to be honest. I don't see I don't see a ton of help for the offense, which if again, you look at the back half of the season, I think Seattle's defense fared better than their offense did. I think their defense started to kind of figure things out. So I don't think they need as much help in that area. And I think that's also where a lot of their young talent is. It's just kind of trying to figure things out. Whereas on offense, it seems like there was some sputtering last year. I mean, besides DK and Kenneth Walker, like Noah Fant is there, right? But even he's like, getting a little older now at this point. There's not a whole lot of like young pieces there. Tyler Lockett's getting old. Jackson
Just
Smith and Jigba, did he
yeah,
get drafted
it's
there?
just like an oddly average team.
Yeah,
In
like
my,
there's just not like any like wow, and I don't know if Mike McDonald's the guy to put the wow into it, but I think the
no,
defense will be good. It'll keep them in games, so you can't knock that. But just too young. I'll give it a C plus.
yeah. Well, yeah, I can't disagree with a lot of what you just said. Let's move on to also a very average team. Let's go to the Titans. They signed Brian Callahan from the Bengals. I think it's a good hire. I don't know if it's a great hire because I also think it's a terrible situation, just like Carolina. Um, Long term, I give it like a B. As of right now, I'm giving it a C just because I think you need to fill other holes. Derrick Henry's on his way out. Um, like you have Will Levis, you have an old receiver in DeAndre Hopkins at this point who has connected with Will Levis, but I don't know, he's aging. I just don't think you need to have him on that same timeline with him, and I just don't think it's a good spot.
Yeah, I think all those things make sense. Uh, I kind of feel the same way about this one. Like I don't know if Brian Callahan is going to really bring the juice you need to make a difference there. So I'll go C plus on Brian Callahan, and also he's a Bengals guy, so I'm just kind of about him in general.
Fair enough. Last one here. We have the Washington Commanders and signing former Cowboys defensive coordinator Dan Quinn. I'll actually give this a B plus, believe it or not. And I think it's just because you've seen him progress players like Micah and Trayvon Diggs and Bland and all those guys from the Cowboys. Now developing an offensive guy like a quarterback. I don't really know, but I will give this a B plus.
Yeah, I don't think Dan Quinn's a bad hire. I think he needed a change of scenery too. Getting rid of Bieniemy though, I don't think was a good move. So I'll go C plus for Dan Quinn. But that still remains to be seen. And a lot like the other, we talked about all the coaches, it just remains to be seen a little bit. But thanks again for watching in and tuning in for another episode of Life in the Stands. Remember to follow us on Twitter at stands_life or on YouTube and TikTok at Life in the Stands, as well as on Spotify. Thanks again for listening, and let's enjoy the Super Bowl this weekend.